And then I wanted to ask you too. So speaking of spillover from like animal to human, um, I think the prevalent theory about where COVID came from early in the pandemic was it was a bat in China, in Wuhan. But recently there's been some speculation that there's a level 4 lab in Wuhan that deals a lot with viruses. And people think that maybe COVID came from a lab leak as opposed to a animal spillover. Do you like know anything about this or think like
Yeah,
one or the other?
yeah, I don't know because I haven't, I don't know. I don't even know how necessarily we could know if there was an accident of that type. I don't. Those are very unlikely, and I would not. It's not what. At least it's the idea of was it created in a lab. I think we've moved that aside, and it's unlikely. Did it? Was it an accidental lab infection? I don't think so. These usually these there is the level of protection when you're working at not even level 4, just the level 3 virus, the amount of protection involved and the safety procedures that are required are makes it very, very unlikely for that to occur. um, but I don't know, has it occurred in the past? Yes. There's the 1977 flu, which was the return of H1N1, was um, a case of infection that happened in a lab and eventually came back into the human population. But it's
Oh, which lab was that?
I don't, well, I don't know the specific lab. It was a lab in Russia.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
but
yeah. Because sorry, go ahead.
I mean, well, so the possibility is there, but it just the likelihood of a virus emerging from nature is thousands of times higher than it emerging or accidentally coming out of a lab, right? And it's like if the number of spillover events are for the fact are occurring all the time. If we as virologists have found it, it means that we came close enough to it, not for the first time. There must be other times where humans are coming into contact with these viruses. Not every time that a virus jumps over by accident to a human does it catch, right? So
Mhm.
I think that, well, this is something that we need to understand better, and we don't know, is that the ecology of viral emergence, because the virus that is not meant to be in humans is not well adapted to humans. So how many times does the interaction, the accidental bite or whatever, occur, and just the virus tries to grow but can't in the human, and so doesn't grow enough to spread? So that likely is happening more often than we imagined. And I think it's the thing we do need to understand. And where is it happening?
Because I know that like COVID is at least from what I've read, it seems like it's very well adapted to humans. So if it like was like if it came from if it was like a species spillover event, how do you think it became so like well like how do you think it adapted so
Well,
well to humans?
yeah, I don't know if we can say that. Well, it's I think it's well adapted to many different hosts. There's some viruses that just have an extremely wide host range to begin with, because the the fact it seems to be adapting more to humans, right? If we consider the new variants to be improving its ability to transmit among humans, but it also is able to infect minks or is able to infect other mammals and other animals, right? So we already know that.
Dogs too, right?
Right. And so we
Like
and
that,
we
yeah.
know from the coronaviruses, the different ones, that they have a quite a wide host range. So I wouldn't say that it was already. It's not that it was specifically adapted to humans. It's that it was already able to infect many different animals. Some, and this is different from other viruses, that there's some viruses that are very, very specific. And that depends also on how they infect the cell. What is the receptor they use to get it? Is that receptor only in humans, or is it in all animals or all living things?
And then I guess like in the same thread, so like what what would you consider like definitive evidence that that COVID was like a spillover? Like, is there like a specific thing where like you're like, oh, we found this virus in like this animal and this animal, so clearly it must have followed this path.
Well, so yeah, I think it's very difficult to have definitive evidence of spillover because we don't even know all of the animals that are out there, right? It's like for most viruses that I work with, which tend to be these emerging viruses that have somehow jumped species, we don't really know what the reservoir is. You know, if I'm thinking even of many of the things like chikungunya virus, Mayaro virus, etc., we don't know. We assume that the reservoir where it exists is either a non-human primate or a rodent, a mammal of some kind in the tropical forests or jungles. Without knowing that, we can't really get the direct evidence because we can't sample the viruses from the mosquito through X number of mammals in the forest to us, right? So we might find one, but it might not be the true line. It might also be an accidental dead end host the way we were initially. And without knowing all of the species that are out there, it's almost impossible to be completely sure. And oftentimes we just see an intermediate host that is somewhat close to us, often a domesticated animal or a wild animal that is somehow being traded in in the animal trade, etc. But really the one that is out there in the forest, who knows?
Okay, yeah, because I guess the closest one people have thought is like a bat, right? So you're saying like it may have come from a couple other species back and then reached the bat and then gotten to us.
Yeah, or
So
from the bat to us, there was some question of pangolin or other other kinds of animals, and for even for things like the mosquito viruses that I work on, we know we know perfectly well where chikungunya virus is circulating among humans and which two species of urban mosquito are involved in this urban cycle, the one that catches us and causes our outbreaks. But when it actually comes from the forest, there we don't know exactly which species of mosquitoes, and there's many of them that could be potentially carrying the virus. And so that gets much more complicated because suddenly you don't know how many different mosquito species and how many different hosts, because each mosquito preferentially feeds off different hosts. And what does that look like? Is it just a 1-2 combination, or is it a bigger and stranger network? And so we don't know that. And if, ideally, if we did know it, we would be able to identify what is the interaction, the accidental interaction that occurs between us and them that needs to be avoided.